Morning, church fam. I don't know about you guys, but life doesn't always work out the way that I anticipate. Most of us eventually arrive at a moment in life that refuses to cooperate with our expectations. Anybody else familiar with that? We see the righteous suffer, the wicked prosper. Careful plans, sometimes they fail. Careless plans sometimes succeed. The healthy get sick, the faithful are betrayed, and prayers that we expect God to answer seem to linger in silence. And at some point, I ask myself, what am I missing? Or maybe, why doesn't life work out the way I think it's supposed to? You know, this is crazy that you could do everything in your power to be upright and righteous and still get the short end of the stick. I look at the book of Proverbs, and it's got all kinds of passages that I read as promises, which is wrong, because they're not promises. Just because I do the right thing doesn't mean I'm going to get a certain result. They are books of Proverbs, or they are proverbs, not promises. In Ecclesiastes, the book of Ecclesiastes enters into this tension, not with despair or cynicism, but with honesty and a real look at how our world works. Go ahead and turn over to Ecclesiastes if you would. Ecclesiastes is a little book, about in the middle of your Bible. Tim Mackey does a great job talking about Ecclesiastes, and he mentions in his sermon that every Bible has a table of contents in the beginning, and there's no shame in using that, especially for these smaller chapters. So if you can't find Ecclesiastes, go ahead and use that table of contents. Ecclesiastes chapter 1 and verse 2 says, "Vanity of vanities, says the preacher. Vanity of vanities, all is vanity." I'm going to pick on Sarah. Sarah, what's the word for vanity, the Hebrew word? Come on. We just talked about it. Hevel, yes. Hevel. So we're not going to dive too deep in the Greek, but the languages. I'm not even proficient in that. It's just you come across these words. The Hebrew word is Hevel. What is Hevel, Sarah? Can you mist, smoke, vapor? It's not just a fleeting thing. Tim Mackey in his sermon, he gets up and he was gifted a pipe as a new employee gift from the ministry team that he was working with. So he had a pipe and some English tobacco, and he lights his pipe up on the stage to use as an example of smoke. Beth asked me, she's like, "You're not going to get up there and smoke, are you?" I'm like, no. No, I'm not. But just imagine a pipe and the smoke coming out of it. The smoke is there. It's real. You can see it. But what happens when you try to grab it or contain it in your hand? It's not there. A vapor is fleeting. The smoke lingers, but you still can't grab onto it. Hevel is elusive. It's difficult to comprehend. It's something that cannot be controlled or contained. It's enigmatic. It's full of enigmas. And I like this one. Because when I think of Hevel or vanity or meaningless, I don't think of the word enigma. But as we already listed, there are enigmas in life. In the book of Ecclesiastes, jumps right on in and addresses these. In our lives, Hevel is the faithful husband who loses his wife. This is Hevel. Doesn't make any sense. It's an enigma. The parent who's beside the hospital bed. The Christian who serves faithfully but suffers betrayal and the seemingly unanswered prayer. The book of Ecclesiastes gives us permission to admit that life is often more mysterious and complicated than we're willing to admit. The tension that we find in Ecclesiastes is that we don't like mystery. How many of you want to know all the details about a story you hear? You hear, we got this app on our phone. It tells you about it's like a scanner. It tells you about the calls to the police and medical and stuff like that. And it gives you about between 7 and 20 seconds of recording between dispatch and the officers. Well, that's not enough to tell me the story. I want to know more. I don't like the mystery. We want answers. We want certainty. This is something I strive for in business. We want to know exactly how many bookings we're going to have for this year so we can plan for it. Guess what? We don't know. We don't have the certainty. We want explanations. We were just watching a documentary last night about a young girl who rammed her car into a wall at 100 miles an hour with her boyfriend and his friend in the car and killed them. She survived. Well, the family wants answers. They want an explanation. They want to know why. They didn't get it. We want justice. It's not fair to be wronged and not have justice. We want control. We want to be able to dictate what happens. And these things just don't happen. That's Hevel. And this leads us to our next challenge. And this is a posture. It's a perspective. It's an approach. And it's a grasping posture. When life becomes Hevel, what's your instinct? You just sit back and let it happen? When life becomes Hevel, our instinct is to grasp. Some of us grasp for achievement. Some of us grasp for certainty, answers, vindication, control, possessions. That's a big one in this materialistic world. I know people who do nothing but acquire possessions for the sole purpose to show their family that they've made it, to create envy and show off. People suffer with being hoarders. So possessions, people grasp for possessions to find meaning and control. Sometimes it's status. The teacher in Ecclesiastes, and that's how he's referred to, is the teacher. We often think it's King Solomon, but it's the teacher. Calls this striving after wind. Does anybody here disagree that wind is real? I mean, we live in South Dakota. I mean, do you guys remember December 18th? Is wind real? Oh man, it is. There's no doubt that it exists. You can feel it, you can hear it, you can experience it, but can you see it? Can you actually see the wind itself? But it is there. You can experience it, but you cannot see it directly. You can only see its effects. The trees bend, break, get uprooted. The grass moves and it sways. The clouds shift in the sky, and fallen leaves dance across the ground. Wind is real, but it is elusive. No matter how hard you try, you cannot grasp it. You cannot hold it in your hand. You cannot contain it. What is fascinating is that while you cannot grasp the wind, you can position yourself within the wind. Does a sailor create wind? No, he does not. But he raises a sail. A windmill cannot capture the wind, but it can be moved by it. I think much of our frustration comes from trying to possess what God intends for us to participate in, to position ourselves in. The teacher in Ecclesiastes does not conclude that we give up. He starts off, like I already read, verse 2 of chapter 1. Vanity of vanities, says the preacher, vanity of vanities, all is vanities. And in the end, he repeats the same thing. Verse 8 of chapter 12 says, "Vanity of vanities, says the preacher, all is vanity." But he goes on to say, and conclude the book, and says, "The preacher sought to find acceptable words, and what was written was upright, words of truth. The words of the wise are like goads, and the words of scholars are like well-driven nails, given by one shepherd. And further, my son, be admonished by these, of making many books there is no end, and much study is wearisome to the flesh. Let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter. Fear God and keep his commandments. For God will bring every work into judgment, including every secret thing, whether good or evil." Now, I don't know if we have any shepherds in here, but does anybody know what a goat is? Or goading is? Yeah. It's like a prod. You kind of move them around with it. You got a hook, or here it describes the goad, and the words of the scholars are like well-driven nails. It's like a piece of wood with a nail driven in it that's used as a hook to guide them around. And it says, given by one shepherd. Who's our shepherd? Yeah. So he's not saying everything's meaningless or worthless or I can't think of another word, but his explanation is that even though it's all vanity, the shepherd is there using these words to goad us, to encourage us and persuade us and move us in a direction. He does not conclude that we give up and just resign ourselves to these futile things. The solution given over and over in Ecclesiastes, he says it over and over: eat your bread, drink your wine, enjoy your labor, enjoy companionship, and receive the day, receive life as a gift. That's his answer. Live in the present as if it were a present. The question is not, how do I control life? The question is, how do I faithfully receive the life God has given me today? Go ahead and turn over to John 15. I think it's important to note before we go over to John, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. Okay, to John, that there's another term that Ecclesiastes used, and that is under the sun. Okay? So the book of Ecclesiastes is kind of a thesis or a theory on what if God didn't exist? What if it was left to us humans to figure out? What if it wasn't God? So it repeats over and over under the sun, meaning in this life, us humans. So contextually, he's talking about this thesis of if God wasn't here, how would humans find purpose in life? And we're going to kind of take a shift here and shift our thinking a little bit and make some applications that I think really struck me, really, really profound, and extremely meaningful in my life, and I hope they have some impact on you too. In John 15, Jesus is talking to the disciples who are about to experience confusion, loss, fear, and uncertainty. What's going to happen? Anybody? Anybody? Yeah, Jesus is leaving them. He's not going to be there anymore. They had certain expectations and hopes of what was going to happen, and they're about to be put into quite a bit of chaos. And in this chapter, Jesus doesn't say to them in their confusion and their loss and fear that's coming, he doesn't say to them, figure everything out or master life's mysteries, grab hold of it as if you can contain it or control it. What's he say in verse 4? Abide in me. Abide. The branch does not manufacture life. The branch of a tree receives life as long as it remains connected. And life flows through that entire tree and fruit emerges. The book of Ecclesiastes teaches us that life cannot be mastered. But Jesus teaches us that life need not be mastered. He asks us to abide. If you go to John chapter 3, this is something that John's had in a couple of his sermons. And I think this is pretty awesome. I'm going to steal this. He's talking to Nick at night. So he's talking to Nicodemus at night. And in verse 5, he starts and says, Jesus answered, "Most assuredly I say to you, unless one is born of the water and the Spirit, he cannot enter the kingdom of God. That which is born of the flesh is flesh, and that which is born of the Spirit is spirit. Do not marvel that I said to you, you must be born again. The wind blows where it wishes, and you hear the sound of it, but cannot tell where it comes from and where it goes. So is everyone who is born of the Spirit." You can hear it. You can experience it, but you cannot control the Spirit. You do not direct it. You do not even fully understand it. Anybody else agree with that? Maybe a better question would be, who here has a full grasp of God's Spirit? Anybody? Like, how does God's Spirit work in me and move me? Yeah. It's not possible. So it is with everyone born of the Spirit. A lot of times we find ourselves chasing the wind, grasping for the wind. What's the word for wind? Ruach. Yeah. John and Andrew have kind of driven this home. And now we're going to talk about the great irony. Ruach means wind, but it also means breath and spirit. No doubt in Ecclesiastes, when he's talking about grasping the wind, he's saying ruach. He's talking about wind. He's talking about life under the sun and what we can see and observe with our senses. But when you see that ruach means wind, but also means breath and spirit, ruach, the word, is all over the Bible. John and Andrew already talked about this, but the ruach hovered over the water. God breathed life into Adam. The spirits spoke of a new spirit. Remember the story of the dry bones? Jesus talked of the Spirit as the wind here in John chapter 3. Pentecost arrived with a rushing wind. The question emerges, what if humanity spends its life trying to seize what God intends to give? That's what Ecclesiastes is analyzing. That's the theorizing, or the theory that is being presented in Ecclesiastes. But the gospel announces, receive Ruach Elohim. The Bible never tells us to catch the wind. It invites us to receive the breath of God. Let's go to Galatians chapter 5. I think every time I do a sermon, I preach to myself more than I preach to everybody else, so I try making practical application that I found in my life. We already started that off with our list of enigmas, the righteous suffering, the wicked prospering, careful plans fail, things like that. But I think the fruit of the Spirit is also kind of an enigma to me, and I'm unraveling it as I grow. Go ahead, John, you want to change the slide? I don't have the clicker. Charlie, do you have a clicker? Brad, you got the clicker? There you go. I don't know about you, but I've totally misunderstood Galatians chapter 5 and verse 22 and following. John had this image up last week, and what an image this is. What is that lady doing? She's stapling fruit to a tree. That's weird. Right? So if you, I don't even know what kind of fruit they are, but apples. We'll call them apples. They look like apples. If you staple an apple to a tree, does it make it an apple tree? No, it doesn't. You Staple an apple to a wall doesn't make the wall a tree. So I treated Galatians chapter 5 as a checklist. Anybody else do that? I grew up in a very legalistic background, looking for answers, trying to gain control through behavior so that I could earn my salvation, in essence. I treated it as a checklist. As if Christianity itself were a self-improvement program. Right? My goal was mastering these virtues to continue my spiritual destiny, or to control my spiritual destiny, i.e., earn my salvation. As if fruit were something that I produced, or I could staple to a tree and make the tree what it's not. Another misnomer, and John pointed this out very kindly on last Sunday. What does it say there? Does it say fruits of the Spirit or fruit of the Spirit? It's singular. It's the fruit of the Spirit. My view of this is a checklist of things that I can improve on, cherry picking one over the other because I think I can excel at that one and maybe move on to the next, was me trying to grasp for that wind. Fruit is not an achievement with badges to be sewn on a sash. Some of you might not know what that is, but Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, right? They're not achievements, individual achievements to be sewn on a sash, but they are evidence of life. An apple does not strive to become an apple, does it? The fruit simply reveals the life flowing through the tree. Go ahead and click the button one more time. The fruit of the Spirit begins to look different when we view it through Ecclesiastes. Peace, not because mystery disappears, but because God is present. We find patience, not because uncertainty vanishes, it doesn't go away. Anybody here not have uncertainty in your life? But because trust emerges. Joy, not because suffering has ended, but life is being received as a gift. Love, not because the world became just and everything's fair, but because the Spirit is producing something new inside of me. The Spirit does not remove the mystery or the enigmas of life. Innocent people will still die. Faithful people will lose spouses. The just will suffer injustice in this life. That's just how life is on this earth, under the sun. The Spirit doesn't remove that, but the Spirit does teach us how to live fully in it and position ourselves in it. The fruit is not evidence of striving, but fruit is the evidence of abiding. And that abiding is abiding in God's Spirit and allowing Him to work in our lives. So my question is, what's your posture? I know what mine tends to be. I don't think I'm special. My posture is grasping. I'm trying to grab that smoke, that vapor. I'm trying to contain the wind because I want that control. And that leads to more Hevel. I want to just take a side note and mention something that I noticed. I don't stare at people when they pray. I don't look at people when they pray necessarily, but we have these classical images of people praying, and they're all looking up with clenched fists as if they're trying to plead with God. And I was just thinking the image of the clenched fist kind of hit me. And I look over, and last Sunday, Haley and Robert, they pray like this. What's your posture? Are you trying to control? Or are you submitting and posturing yourself in the Spirit of God?